You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's June 30, 2021. Well, what if you were young and you had a vibrant, great business, profitable, putting out lots of income, and then somebody made you an offer, couldn't refuse? What would you do? Would you take it? And then if you did take it, what would you do then? You know, you're young, you're too young to retire. There's only so much golf you can play in a week, a month, a year. You got to do something. Well, you're going to hear from somebody who's in exactly that position and what he's doing. And hey, if you ever get that windfall, maybe you'll learn something and you'll know what to do if it happens to you as well. Hey, any questions or comments? I'd love to know your dream retirement, your vacation, life vacation. Just send me an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, the person I'm talking about is Jeff Socha, and you find him at Jeff, Jeff, Socha, SOCHA.com. And Jeff, hey, up until recently, you had a financial advisory firm and you were raking in the bucks and having the time of your life. And then somebody came along and offered you so much money that you just said goodbye, right?
I wish it was that easy, but I mean, I guess that's similar to the outcome. So the result is similar to that. I mean, you know, if I sold it right around the same time that I turned 40. So I got hopefully more life ahead of me than I have behind me. And so it's a real psychological process to make that decision, I think.
Well, hey, that's what life is about. I get the idea that the offer kind of came out of the blue, that you weren't really thinking about this, and then it just landed in your lap, so to speak.
I can tell you that a year ago, I wasn't planning on selling. But I had some terms and conditions that I would be willing to sell under, and I was able to get those, and so I was happy with that, and figured why not? I think if I could be in a place of financial independence, that's a really great spot to be. And I think financial independence is a really interesting thing that people talk about, but I don't know how much they define it. You know, and when you think about the psychology in and around and of money, I think that, you know, what people get happiness from more than anything else, it's not these commercials you see with a magic number or some certain investment portfolio. It's about the ability to control time. And I think in order to control your time, you've got to be able to say, what does it take financially for me to be able to wake up and say, hey, for myself, my family, we can do what we want now. And that, I think there's a lot of peace and joy that comes from that.
Yeah, I've been in that situation before, and I can attest to that fact. Yes. So what's next for you?
So you know, what I'm working on now is just pursuing again what got me into the financial business in the first place. I started to help people. I was passionate about finance and money. This experience has just made me a better advisor by going through the experience. I have a lot more to lean on to help people as they navigate perhaps going into retirement or selling a business, or what happens if you get some inheritance or windfall. And really just how do you ever think about transitioning from a P&L and a paycheck as steady income to living off of a balance sheet. And that's a really big change, you know, to say, hey, I'm used to getting this monthly cash flow, and now I've got this bucket of money that's supposed to, you know, produce my lifestyle. How does that work? And there's a lot that goes into that, and where the markets are, and the political kind of changes on the horizon, and there's a lot of uncertainty. people go, well, geez, the markets are at the high. Can we invest? Aren't we due for a crash? It seems like we're overdue for a crash. We haven't really had a good, cleaning out of the market since 2008. So seems like it's been over 12 years, and history would tell us there's been two recessions every 12 years. So, aren't we overdue? But how do you balance that out with the Fed just printing, trillions of dollars and pumping it in? I mean, there's a lot to make sense of. And, interest rates are at zeros. This isn't like our grandparents' day where you just have $1 million and you stick it in a 15% CD and you're good to go. That doesn't exist anymore. It's an interesting landscape to navigate.
Oh, that it is. So do you feel any relief that you're no longer in the business?
On one hand, I think there's a lot of relief of going, wow, that's cool. I was able to cash out. And on the other hand, it's kind of like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So what's really, really interesting change is the ability to wake up and to serve others and to help other people in their financial life, not because I need to. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things is if you can approach your work life from not having to do it for a paycheck. So now I could do it just because I feel like it, or I like it, or I want to help people, whether it's pro bono, charity, for free, whatever, or doing a paid engagement. So I think it's just really great to be in a position of not needing it. And there's this concept, and I think it really, really applies to your money. When you have low need, you have high power. So you have a high power in your life. When you have high need, you have low power, right? And so part of it is going, how do I set myself up financially to have low need so that I can approach life from a place of higher power?
Yeah, and that's a great point. So just, Jeff, if you would share with us your background, what kind of home you grew up in economically, and
Sure.
got to this point.
Yeah, I grew up out in West Texas, good small town, West Texas. Family owned a construction company. So grew up wearing a tool belt and working out there in the 100-degree summers, and went off to A&M, Texas A&M, fighting Texas Aggies. I got a degree in engineering and finance, and then spent about 5 years lobbying Congress on tax legislation for a couple different PACs. That was cool. Did that while I was building my financial practice, and then went back to business school at Harvard. And then, just continued growing that practice until I was able to sell it this year.
All right. So obviously you were entrepreneurial background, probably upper middle class upbringing, similar to myself. What do you say to the people who are struggling at the bottom, who are trying to just make their bills, who got slaughtered by the pandemic and the untoward government reaction to it that really destroyed their dreams in a lot of cases? What do you say to that person?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Dore Copper Mining is a premier, near-term, high-grade copper and gold redevelopment opportunity with tremendous exploration potential only 14 kilometers from the town of Chibougamau in mine-friendly Quebec. Dore Copper is debt-free and owns a 2,700-ton-per-day mill with an 8-million-ton tailings facility ready to be used. There is already power to site, and it is accessible by paved highway and rail. Dore Copper aims to produce a profitable hub-and-spoke operation of over 100,000 gold equivalent ounces per year, or over 60 million pounds of copper equivalent by 2024. Because of the existing infrastructure and location, a low capex is anticipated to recommence production. Dore Copper trades under DCMC in Toronto and under DRCMF on the OTC. To learn more, go to dorecopper.com. That's dorecopper.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network. The information you need to thrive now more than ever.
So I would say if you can control your desires, you can have a lot more control over your life. So in the 50s, the average home was less than 1,000 square feet. And today, I think in America, the average maybe new home is something like 2,400 square feet. And so you go, okay, there was a time and a place where people lived differently, and a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. So the more that you can control your desires, the more that you can have control of your life. So you can live in this country. One of the things I do that just sometimes I don't know why I like looking it up. I look up like, what's the cheapest place to retire in the United States or in the world? And you'll be amazed. There's lots of articles, and they'll have articles talking about where you can live on $2,000 a month in different cities. And because cost of living is really low, housing is really inexpensive. And so I think the more that you can control your desires, the more you can control your financial life. And what I think COVID actually did to help a lot of people is instead of all of the jobs being in the city and being geographically bound, there's a lot of remote work opportunities now, which actually give you the ability to work from a small town with a lower cost of living and do your work remotely, which could actually really have a dramatic impact on reducing your expenses. So, if you're struggling right now, that's what I would say. I think another thing to keep in mind if you're struggling is the labor market. It's really tough to find great talent. And I don't think great talent is something that, we're not talking about finding, NASA scientists. We're just talking about finding really good, reliable people who will do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. Like, will you show up? Will you do what you said you were going to do? Are you going to follow through? Are you going to put in the extra effort? And that's the kind of stuff that people have under their control. It's not about, hey, what school you went to or what family you grew up in or what, any of that. It's like, are you willing to be reliable? And I think just having a reliable person with great work ethic who's willing to really apply themselves, there's lots of opportunity out there right now. And if you're one of those people, that's a habit, a discipline, a behavior you have under your control.
Yeah, that's such a great point. In places like Florida, California, not exactly known for their work ethic in the state. And it's interesting because with remote work capability, you don't have to live in a high tax state any longer, and you can live much better. That's another thing. I remember when all of this started, the Great Recession, I talked to a guy named Wayne Allen Root, and he wrote a book on how to survive whatever it was, the Obama years. Not so much political as going to get higher taxes, everything's going to get more expensive. How do you deal with that? And one of his top suggestions was move to a state with no or very small state income tax, because you'll get an immediate pay increase of like anywhere from 5 to 10%. And especially now that the SALT taxes are no longer deductible, maybe that's true now more than ever. And maybe that's why people really are fleeing to Texas, to Tennessee, to Florida, to even Washington State, Nevada. There's 9 states with no income taxes, but
Wyoming,
Wyoming, South Dakota, and Alaska. So those are kind of non-starters for me. Wyoming's not bad. It's actually kind of a cool place. I was just there. So what about that concept? So the cheapest places to live, but also the places where you get to keep the most of your paycheck.
Yeah, and I think business is really booming in those states, in the towns in those states. So, and that brings, I think, where we've got to be really, really honest with ourselves. I believe that people have 2 reasons for doing something, one that sounds good and the real one. And the more that we can get really honest with ourselves, if we say, hey, I've got a job that exists in every city. Well, if you're in a city, in a state with high state income tax, I can tell you that the job market, at least here in Austin, Texas, is going gangbusters. It's through the roof. If you're reliable, if you've got good work ethic, if you apply yourself, if you can show up, you can get a job paying pretty good income here. If you feel like you're stuck, pack it up and move. And if you're not willing to move, then just be honest about it. So realize, hey, I'm bearing this cost as a choice, not because I have to, right? You're not stuck. Nobody's making you stay there, right? So, but I think we've got to have personal responsibility personal accountability, take some personal ownership and responsibility in our lives. And, one of the biggest things that concerns me about what the government has done over the last year and a half is I think they've really, really played into the sense of entitlement. And you've got to realize, like, the government doesn't have money. They don't have any money they didn't take from someone else. So the government doesn't produce money. They just take money from people and then they redistribute it. And that game doesn't work. So, that's concerning because it's almost promoting saying, hey, don't get up early and go to work and work hard and apply yourself and do all that. Just sit back and we'll increase your stay-at-home pay.
Yeah. And they've provided an incentive not to work. So, Jeff, all this money you've gotten, what types of investments are you in?
Oh, man. Well, I'll tell you, everybody has their own risk tolerance and risk profile. I'm a low risk person. I do not like a lot of risk. I like a high degree of certainty. And unfortunately, in investing, there's not a lot of guarantees. So I look at investing this way. I think, what's the rate of return that I need to produce what I need from my assets? And then what's the lowest risk way I can produce that? So I don't want to take something that I need and put my needs at risk. So if my needs are covered, then I want to take the least amount of risk required to accomplish those goals. So that looks different for everyone. But in doing that, the fixed income world is really challenging. We've got practically zero interest rates coming out of the government. They say they're going to try to raise them. I don't know how that's going to work. So the bond rates are super low. You've got some cash value insurance that's paying okay. CD rates are down to 1%. I mean, there's not much there. The fixed income market is just really hard. So then you start looking at things like dividend portfolios and looking at, okay, how do I get these blue chip dividend stocks that have been paying a dividend for 50 years, blue chip stable companies? You might take some market fluctuation, but at least you're getting the dividend cash flow. So, I think looking at staples, looking at consumer staples that are, things that people need even in a recession, looking at things like energy, specifically in energy, looking at utilities, like people are going to continue paying their electric bill for the most part in a recession. So looking at stuff like that where, hey, I realize the market keeps reaching new heights. But if we go back to look at Benjamin Graham, the Intelligent Investor, I realized some of that stuff, he updated it. I don't remember how many times before he died, but one of the basic principles there is he just used stocks and bonds, but you could say fixed income and kind of equity exposure. And he said, hey, you should always have at least 25% in equities, but not more than 75% in equities. And so I think even if you're like me and you say, oh my gosh, I'm really nervous about new highs in the market and peaks in the market. Okay, well, a long time, the philosophy of holding at least maybe 25% of your investments and that exposure makes sense. So kind of where your risk tolerance is there is maybe I use that 25 to 75% scale and say, hey, if I'm really nervous about it being high, sure, put 25% into the equity so I don't miss out on potential growth, but I feel more comfortable with 75% kind of fixed income. And that works for me. But, I think using that as a simple guide to figure out where do you fit, right? And if you're sitting there living off of a balance sheet, you probably don't want to put a lot of it at risk unless you have lots of excess.
All right. Well, hey, Jeff, we really appreciate you coming on. Good luck with your semi-retirement. I've been semi-retired myself since 1998. It is like the best way for sure. And hey, just tell us again where we find you, how we connect with you on the web.
Yeah, just follow me at jeffsoha.com or look me up, Jeff Soha at LinkedIn. And my email is jeff@jeffsoha.com. So shoot me a note. Let me know what you think.
All right, excellent. And if you got any questions or comments for Jeff, you can always send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. I know that email is on the tip of your tongue. And make sure you go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the free newsletter. Jeff, hey, good luck on your new career, in quotes, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.